Welcome to Coopsys TechTalks. I am Scott Spatz, the president of Coopsys, and today I'm joined by my partner and our CEO and founder and our director of AI solutions here at Coopsys, Mr. Bob DeLisa.
Hi, Scott.
Bob, how are you today?
I'm well.
Excellent.
A little rainy out there, but
Yeah.
it was a drag driving in this morning, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
We're here.
We're here.
We're here in the podcast.
We're here to
studio.
talk about AI again today.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. So today, we're having a lot of conversations these days with clients of ours, prospective clients of ours, other organizations, just kind of cutting through the hype of AI and how it's actually applicable to small, medium-sized businesses, and what are the real world use cases, and how can they kind of again cut through the hype and determine how it can really apply to their business and help and value and put some value in their business. So we're going to talk a little bit today about some tools, some solutions, how you can do it safely, guardrails, and then how you can talk with your workforce and your teams about how you'd like to implement AI within your business. So I guess just to start us off, Bob, for a typical SMB owner, what can they expect to get out of our podcast today?
Well, my hope is that we can actually go into tools that really matter, tools that businesses can adopt today that they already have. Actually, most of them have in place or they're already using. So what I want to kind of do is frame it out with 3 different buckets for AI tools. I see there being one for embedded productivity. Let's call that Copilot. Okay, it's already in the environments. It allows you to draft emails, summarize meetings, build Excel formulas. But the key point is that it lives inside your existing security boundary. So that means your IT policies, they already apply if they're set up correctly. Some SMBs, they're paying for licenses for Copilot, but they haven't turned on governance. So they're underusing or they're overexposing. The second bucket is going to be generative assistance. That's ChatGPT, that's Claude, that's Gemini. They're incredibly powerful tools. But here's what most leaders miss. When the employee pastes a client contract into the ChatGPT, that's now training data for that supplier, and that's a liability for you. So the third bucket is where AI starts saving the real hours. That would be like automated intake forms, summarize support tickets, workflow triggers. So think about Power Automate pulling an invoice and reading it and routing it and then flagging exceptions. That's an example of AI really at work. So this is where the time savings show up on the P&L.
Yeah. So you talked a lot so far and a lot of scenarios. Yeah. So let's break it down just a little bit. You talked about some of the common tools out there, right? Copilot was a lot of what you just talked about. And we'll get into that a little bit further in a minute. But what like the most common, AI tools that people are familiar with today? What's like what would you say the right use cases are for each? So when you talk about, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, how would you say to use each of those? And typically for an SMB, this is what we're trying to focus on here.
Yeah.
Just a quick summary of where the applicable use cases are.
I think the use cases really are, I would think of ChatGPT, that was the original one. That's the one that has the most use.
People most familiar with
most familiar with that one. Let's call that the Swiss Army knife. That's how I would call that. It's really an all-purpose tool. It's not really specialized in any one. So if you're just using it for general purpose AI, it's a really great place to start.
Research, information gathering.
Yep. Drawing.
Kind of
It'll do
Google on steroids.
It'll do visuals. Yes, and I don't like to say Google on steroids because people think that it's just a search engine, and it's not. It's way more than that. The conversational aspect is obviously the thing that really differentiates it. It allows you to dive deep and go down what I call rabbit holes. You go down a subject and you can keep going into that and dive deeper into it. People love that about it. The thing is the lack of awareness of the governance aspect. So if they're using that tool and they're not telling their boss or not telling anybody in IT that they're using that tool, that's where the exposure is. So that's where the risk is.
And their employees are likely already using it, correct?
Yeah, they are. They're using Gemini now, which is really easy, especially if you're you have a Google account. Now you can use Gemini and search through all your Google stuff. So, not Google stuff, Google Drive, Gmail, those kinds of things. So, and then let's see, Grok. Grok is great because it's tied to X or Twitter. And that for real-time information, for something new, when you're looking at new events happening in the world, that's a great go-to because it's so tapped into the online platform, the social media. So and it's also a very sophisticated tool. It's maximally truth-seeking, as Elon Musk likes to say. And then Claude. Claude to me has really made some recent leaps and bounds, especially in the coding space. So if you're a coder, you probably realize that Claude Code is if you use it, it's probably doing everything that you can do as a developer. Now what you have to do is rethink how you do code and how you write your programs, because now you have this very powerful coder at your disposal. So now you're its manager. So I kind of think of Claude as being the tool for that. Plus, it's excellent at writing. It's excellent at things like infographics. So if you want to tell it, hey, give me an HTML file that will give me a great graphic of this concept that I'm thinking of, if you prompt it correctly, it'll do some great things. Getting back to Copilot is really married to ChatGPT. So if you're already using ChatGPT, it's very similar. It's using the same OpenAI model. Is the same exact language model.
Right.
But what Copilot has done, what Microsoft has done with Copilot, is they've opened it up to other models like Claude, for instance. We're right now in-house developing an agent that can not only use the ChatGPT model, it can actually use the Claude model, which would give you maybe possibly deeper inference. It really does a good job of going deeper, especially in the newer models, 4.5 and 4.6 of Sonnet and Opus. So those are, I would say right now, those are the top today. Here we are early March 26. Today, I would say Claude is technically on the top of the hill, top of the heap. But for organizations that are adapting standards and have already gone the Copilot path, it's certainly an excellent tool. You could leverage multiple models.
Yeah. So for SMBs that are just getting started, if you're a business owner and you're trying to determine, how can we really use AI within our business and how can we get some value out of it? Is Copilot the right place to start?
If you're a Microsoft shop, absolutely. It is ideally suited to tools you're already using if you're using Excel, Word, SharePoint, Teams, Outlook. Those are the tools that it's deeply, deeply embedded with, and you're not going to be able. You can use other models to use in your Microsoft environment, but Microsoft already has it figured out, and they've had it figured out for a while. They're a little bit behind on some other areas, I would say, on the coding aspects. That's why right now we're experimenting with Claude internally to develop some of our solutions, but we're also obviously working a lot in Copilot Studio.
It's a mix of the right tool for the right application.
We have a very open approach to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But for powering the data that you possess as a business, Copilot seems like the natural fit for a typical SMB.
Yes, especially in the Microsoft realm.
Right.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about Copilot specifically and the different levels or flavors of Copilot. Right. There's Copilot Consumer, the what everybody in the world has access to.
Sure.
Then there's Copilot that you have just as part of your Microsoft ecosystem.
Right.
And then there's Copilot Premium. Right. So let's talk a little bit about those.
We'll start with the consumer version, as you call it. So when you go into, when you're in your Microsoft account and you want work or personal, you ever get that I don't know, most of us might, you either may or may not have a personal Microsoft account. If you do, the version that you get is the consumer Copilot. It's a different icon. It is just like ChatGPT. It's got no governance behind it. There's no domain. There's no tenant. There's no ability for an IT person to.
It's just a public AI
essentially. And then you feed it information, maybe sensitive information or the things that you really. That's where the governance aspect of it is. That data can be used by the frontier companies to train their models. So
the concerns around data going into that version of Copilot are the same with any of the other tools that you previously mentioned.
Great, that's right. So when you go into the Copilot chat, they call it, right? That's the quote unquote free version if you're an M365
the business version of Copilot, right?
So
what you get as part of your 365 subscription.
Yeah, so most of our clients have Microsoft 365 Business Premium. That license entitles you to use Copilot Chat. And the difference between Copilot Chat and the consumer Copilot is that you're now contained within the tenant, and that information is not only encrypted, but there's data privacy behind it. So now you're subject to Microsoft's protection policies behind the sharing of the
when you say
AI inputs.
When you say contained within the tenant, we're basically meaning contained within your Microsoft
environment.
Yes. Your Microsoft ecosystem, your data.
That's right.
That your business.
That's right.
Uses.
The chat remains within that.
So that
container.
Examples of that would be right. It would be your Teams information, your SharePoint information, maybe your file shares if you've connected them.
Yeah.
Your email.
Oh, it could
your
be
Word
PDFs
docs
that you've downloaded too. Yeah. It's still
anything you've saved in your Microsoft environment.
That's right. Yep. Anything that and then obviously you can paste any documents that you have from an email into it. And yes, it generally keeps within the Microsoft environment. The next step up is the full Copilot license, and that is it's an additional charge. It's anywhere from I think $22 to $30 a month. It's changed a few times, but that allows you to now govern the entire tenant or have it respects now rules of what it can see within your Microsoft environment. So where the Copilot chat doesn't have that, nor does it have any of the tools for the apps, what the Copilot, the full version of Copilot does is now it can see all of your Outlook, anything that you have access to, your Outlook emails, your Teams chats, your files in SharePoint. It automatically indexes those and looks at those on your behalf so now when you want to look to see what happened during that meeting you had yesterday or help you prepare for a client meeting that's coming up, it's wonderful for that because now it's going inside your emails and it's looking for information related to that event that's coming up or whatever else you have to do within your environment. So it really understands your environment. It understands over time how you work in your environment. It understands how you speak and how you want the outputs to be. So what I like to do is I like to go into Copilot and give it specific instructions about who I am, who I work for, how I work with my customers. Those are kinds of inputs you want to give it up front. So every chat session is persistent.
So the output is more personalized to you and to where your role is and what you do and how you work with clients of ours.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the different levels of Copilot, and I know we talked more specifically about the premium version of it. Mm-hmm. Why does that matter? And why would an SMB owner want to have those sort of controls in place in their Copilot environment?
So you might have I think what you're driving toward, and my feeling on this is strong, is sensitivity. So you have data in your environment that is sensitive and that you may or may not want Copilot to see. So though you have to think about that. So you have to and that's not just a simple what I have in my inbox or what I have in my personal folders. It's really across your entire tenant. So you have to think about where sensitive documents might live. And part of governance is manually knowing where that is, like knowing kind of your organization, where your data lives. That's step one. Do the data.
How do you get your arms around that? How do you, I mean,
Well,
any SMB has just thousands and thousands of files all over the place, right? And it just grows and grows, and you don't think to go back and get your arms around it. Like, how do you go about doing that before, unleashing the power of AI within your data?
My suggestion is to use tools. There's available tools out there to go through that data. You have to give it access to that data, and it will automatically go in to everything that Copilot can see and tell you where it sees potentially sensitive documents. So it's a manual exercise, but at least you can have the tool help you identify the areas where those documents live.
So that's some of the preparatory work, like we're doing for clients of ours when they're deploying AI, right?
Yeah, we have a kind of a program called AI Foundations, and that is definitely part of the process.
Right.
So once you do that, you have an idea where that data is. Then you make decisions on who can see that data and who should see that data. That's where you get into not only controls of where that document lives, but also labeling that document or labeling that set of documents a certain way so that Copilot can't see it, users can't see it, and therefore Copilot can't see it either. So that is done at a document level or at a folder level.
So getting those foundational things done first before you enable Copilot use throughout the organization is really important.
Right. It's called it's a component of data loss prevention or DLP for short. So you'll hear DLP a lot. You'll also hear something in the Microsoft world called Purview, which is a DLP tool to monitor your data loss prevention and do your sensitivity labeling within the Purview environment. That enables now the governance that's necessary to then do a full rollout of the licensed Copilot.
Right.
So we're really only talking about the licensed Copilot here. The Copilot chat, which some people may just go with the free version, not as important, but you don't have that extra layer of governance. So that's the way I see companies doing it. The ones that are looking for compliance and or more security minded, they're definitely 10 out of 10. They need to deploy the governance aspects, the Purview and the data sensitivity labeling.
Yeah.
So that's key.
And those are the tools and systems kind of preparedness. The other big area of preparedness that we talk about with clients is around their policies and setting guardrails and training their staff around responsible use of AI. And again, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, is the likelihood is that your employees are using AI in your business right now, whether you've asked them to or not.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit for a minute about what are the right protocols and documents that you should be establishing and disseminating to your staff before you launch use of AI within your business. And that would be AI acceptable use policies, right? And we talk about what those consist of and kind of, again, setting the foundations and the guardrails in that policy, in those policy documents around, how you expect your employees to use AI, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Generally speaking, you want to use common sense when using these tools. Knowing how they work is really, I think, an important thing to understand, rather than you just talking to it and having a conversation go off the rails. What you want to do is you want to know what the boundaries are in your organization. So, for instance, what we'll do is we can put restrictions on the SharePoint side so that won't even be seen by Copilot. That's one area. But with acceptable use policies, I would say that they're more specific to the client to each client. They're going to have their own set of what tools they're going to allow,
Right.
and when to use
What
it.
those use cases are.
Correct. And then personal devices come into play. Like, are you going to use it for personal devices? There has to be some ground rules about what you give to the AI and what you don't. So that has to be part of the policy.
Then we talk about training too, right? And just talking, not only just training, but talking about using AI in your business, and maybe establishing like a committee or a group of people in your company that
Right.
can identify opportunities and use cases of AI, because it helps address the misconception of AI replacing jobs, and maybe your staff being fearful about you as the owner or the leadership team coming up with ways to reduce staff by way of use of AI. And you can fend that off a bit by just talking about it more in your business, right? And helping your employees understand how the business is intending on using AI, and then how they play a role in that, right?
Right. Yeah. The fear that's out there is a legitimate one, but yes, you actually alluded to it. It can be offset by the incredible things you can do in your current role. Most jobs, I have to say, it's not every job, but in most jobs, AI can be used to 5x or 10x your output. And it's true. I've seen it. I use it in what I'm doing. We're expanding the services that we can provide that we couldn't provide before. Mostly into doing more development work that we wouldn't see ourselves doing those kinds of things. It would just, if we did in the past, it would be bringing in a third party partner to do that work. We can now do that internally. So that's just a very powerful example of what, as a company, I see a company like ours being able to do.
Right.
Any company,
Those opportunities are the same in any business.
In any industry, right? You can map it to your industry, right? All of a sudden, the things that you wouldn't do because they were too complicated or too much work to set up, you now have this super assistant to help you stand up these new services or products or whatever they are, or processes is internal. But you got to have a good foundation. You have to have your people, and you have to have your process.
Yeah,
that has to be solid. Before you implement this.
Right. And then the human in the loop aspect too, right? Of verifying
that's
outputs,
the people part,
right?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that also ties into the training and the just talking about AI and identifying use cases to where you talk through them and you talk through how that you can verify and validate the output before it's disseminated, before it's used, before it's deciphered, whatever the case may be.
Test. That's it. You gotta spend a lot of time with it, fixing it, correcting it, getting it to not hallucinate. That's the frustrating things about AI that I find is when you get into a big project and you're using the tool, your sessions can run out of tokens, and then the answers start becoming. It's sort of like, talking to a friend over and over and over again about something, and then they get tired of listening. The bots actually don't process as well when they get loaded up. So what they'll try to do is they'll try to compress the data, but your best bet is to say, if you need to continue the chat and you see it deteriorating, one of the best things to do is to tell it, save this, the concept of what we're doing in this chat for the next chat. And it will give you a nice summary file that you can then bring into the next chat and continue on your project.
Right.
So that's a good thing to know.
In fact, that brings up a comment of something we talked about recently too, where your chats within an AI session are not, they don't know about each other, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a really good chat session with one of your AI tools, and it's going to be relevant to another future chat session, you want to make sure you export that chat session into a document to then be able to have it be referenceable for the next session.
That's right. That's right. Yep. And that's typically the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yep. And an MD file was usually what it is, but you take that document and you paste it into the next chat, and you're off and running.
Cool. So so we talked a lot about just the chatting aspect of AI, but another big applicable use case for AI within businesses is identifying areas of automation, right? And integration between the different tools and systems and software platforms that they use.
Right.
You've alluded to it a little bit in the conversation, but what are some of the ways that we're identifying where those opportunities are, and how do we leverage our clients' workflows and identify those opportunities?
So one of our things that we like to do is actually engage with the client. It could be a remote or it could be on site. We actually prefer on site because we get to know them a little bit better. We get to know how they work, the human aspect of this. Where are the inefficiencies? Where are the things where they're losing time and they think that AI could help. Mm-hmm. We love those conversations because they come in with the idea. We examine the workflow, and then we kind of just meet ourselves internally to figure out the best possible options for deployment. We have a couple of different methodologies that we use. One is certainly in the Copilot realm, and in the Microsoft realm, you've got Power Apps, Power Automate, which is one of the big tools that we explore. We can use Power Automate to trigger. Basically, Power Automate is a workflow tool. It allows you to say, if this happens, then go to here. If this happens, then do this. And it's actually actions and these agents, if you will, that can be programmed within the Copilot environment. Use Power Automate to actually go through that sequence of workflows.
So repeat tasks or things
that's
like that,
automation. Right? That's a good example of automation. It's not just the task, though. You can actually have it to do an AI lookup. So you can do iterative AI, in other words, these agents are now working. They're actually, you give them a task, they can now spawn off their own sub-agents, if you will, to do tasks, return it back, and give you the result.
Right.
So that's what's really the next step of this whole agentic AI movement. It's been out for a while, but now it's really starting to take hold. The other aspect of this whole thing is we are now working on MCP, and I'm getting a little advanced here, but when we build an agent, we want it to talk to other systems. And those other systems may not have any integration whatsoever in terms of AI, but they might have an API that we could gain access to. What we can do is, with our ability to build these MCP servers, we can actually put in the logic that can interface with these other apps. Right. So yeah, it's automation and it's integration.
Right.
It's a combination of the two.
Right.
So that's basically it on the advanced level. So that's
some pretty complex stuff.
Yeah, you can really go far with this.
Right.
So get those foundations done.
Right.
Then that's the crawling. It's like crawl, walk, run. Right.
Yep.
The walking is getting everybody using the Copilot, and now having your meetings. Maybe that's another thing you mentioned earlier. I think it's important is to have sort of a culture and a promotion of it. By talking about it. Maybe it's after hours, maybe it's during lunch, but really talk to everyone. And others.
Involve all the different areas of your business, right?
Talk
Make
to
it
others.
cross departmental.
How are you using AI?
Right.
How do you see possibly using this?
Yep.
Sharing ideas.
Right.
That's a big part of it.
Right.
Yep.
So I know a lot of people are just getting started on their journeys with AI, but if a business owner or someone on your leadership team can only spend maybe a few hours a month on AI, where should they start? What are the
learning the art of prompting? I think is the first place to start. So if you're a user, just regular using it, it's really getting to know how to prompt, how to train that AI, maybe how to learn how to go from the example of going from one chat session to another. Get good at that. You can give more to the AI than you thought, rather than just doing a simple look up like the Google search. It's way more than that. I have this idea in my mind, and I want to keep coming back to that particular chat session and really milk that and take that idea to wherever it needs to go. That's, to me, the magic of getting good at it. Then the other part of it would be explore it, especially with the integration of the apps. Take time to understand how Copilot in Excel works, how Copilot in PowerPoint works. Have it help you draft emails, have it help you do research. Those are the starting points. When you get good at that, then you can move on, which we call the walking to running. Maybe it's jogging, and build your first agent. See what it can do. And maybe it works for you. Maybe you can share it with somebody else. It works for them. And then as you get into kind of the more sophisticated, you want to talk to somebody who's built these that maybe want to publish an agent out for the entire company. Mm-hmm. For instance, we're working on an HR agent right now.
Right.
And that HR agent you can ask that agent a question, and it will go into only the documents that you tell it to go to fetch that information. So we've kind of divvied it up into two layers, one for the employee and one for the HR team. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty cool project.
Yeah. So, we've talked about the tools, we've talked about the use cases, we've talked about how to get started. Certainly the leaders of a given business should be directing and kind of leading the charge on this, because they're responsible for the responsible use, right? And the safe and responsible use of AI. So I guess our recommendation, right, is to lead that charge, but also involve your staff in those conversations.
Well, right? Yeah. I mean, certainly, probably one of the most important things is to have it be led by the leadership, by the
right.
CEO, by the leaders. There has to be somebody, at least one person on the leadership team, that's going to own this and drive it, because otherwise you're not going to get the adoption that you're looking for at the organizational level.
Right.
So if you need help honestly, this is a good chance for us to just have a conversation about it. Kind of tell you how we would go about doing it. We actually have publications on this. We have the AI Readiness Kit, ARC 4.
Right.
We just published it out last month. And it's a really good read to help you get oriented to what you really have to do next. For instance, there's a manager's guide. So if you want to get your management team involved, you're going to bring them on relatively early through this whole process. So start with that management team, get your key people in there, and then get involved and identify a pilot project where you can actually deploy the full version of Copilot, or whatever AI solution it is. Right. It could be something else too.
Yeah, having that pilot project is important.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Bob. This has been incredibly helpful. I guess just to summarize, if there's one kind of takeaway or main kind of theme that you'd like to leave our audience with, what would it be?
Well, there's definitely one thing I want to leave with you. Every business already has data challenges. You got inconsistent permissions, outdated access controls, sensitive documents in the wrong folders. AI didn't create those problems. AI doesn't create new risk. It exposes what's already there. And that's actually a gift, because now you can see it, you can fix it, and you can build something stronger. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need a massive budget. You need to start the conversation with your team and with your partners and with someone who can help you build that framework. So if this resonated, reach out and talk to your technology partner. And if you don't have one who's thinking about AI governance the way we've been talking about it, well, you know where to find us.
Excellent. That's a great takeaway. Hopefully that resonates with everybody. All right. So if you've been watching the series and wondering how AI fits into your organization, now is the time to start that conversation. Thanks again, Bob.
Thank you, Scott.
And thanks for watching our Coopsys Tech Talks. And please join us for our next episode.